I sat up to see what was wrong with me, and blood was flowing out of my arm. I tried to do something about that with the other arm. And then I thought, well, I'll be captured, because obviously now the enemy was advancing. So I took the stuff out of my pocket in my left hand and buried it, because I had some documents that they shouldn't see. And but next to me, another fellow disturbed me. He was an American Jew by the name of Joe Kleinman from New York, and he had been wounded in the chest pretty badly. And anyway, he managed to sit up and smile at me and ask me for a cigarette. I didn't have any. But I went through the pockets of one or two of the others nearby, and I managed to get 1 or 2 cigarettes out of their pockets. And I lit a cigarette for him. And he asked me for my handkerchief to stop the blood coming from his chest. Well, I gave it was a dirty one anyhow. And the blood was streaming out of his chest. And he said, well, Tom, I think I've had it, he said. And we'd been together for some time. And it's been nice knowing you, he said. And he smoked a bit on his cigarette. So long, he said. And with a smile on his face, he died.
When I saw a group of men with their horses at the bottom of the hill near a stream, I realized that they need not be my own side, they could be the other side, the Francoists. So I approached very, very carefully through the undergrowth until I came near, and I heard them speaking a sort of Spanish, broken Spanish between them. So when I heard them speak Spanish, I knew they were probably on our side, especially since it wasn't good Spanish. So I got out and I asked the bloke there, would he give me a light to my cigarette, which he did. We chatted a little bit in broken Spanish, and we went to the campfire, and I had another smoke, and they gave me some food. And then they put some more logs in the fire, and then they realized that the star I was wearing was a 5-pointed star, and theirs was a 6-pointed star. They were Italians, and they realized I belonged to the International Brigade, and they just caught me, and I was captured.
The Battle of the Ebro, that was a turning point as far as members of the International Brigade were concerned, because at that time there were more Spaniards being thrown into the brigades were being diluted, were really being diluted. For example, the British battalion had 2 Spanish companies, the American Washington Battalion had 3 Spanish companies. Now, this is the first time that I was with the English battalion. All the war up until now, I've been with the German battalions, I've been with American battalions. The Battle of the Ebro was my first experience with the British battalions.
On the 25th of July, 1938, we crossed the Ebro, an offensive. We crossed at dawn in boats. And in spite of terrible bombing and strafing by the fascist planes, we advanced almost to the edge of Gandesa. There was heavy fighting around Corbera and around a hill called 481, where the British battalion suffered serious losses. Lewis Clive and Hayden Guest and a number of the best men fell there, and it went on for 12 days of absolute torture until we were withdrawn. When we come out, the usual procedure went. We had our mail, we had our newspapers, and we arrested and recovered from the terrible battering we had. Then after about 10 days in reserve, we went to the Sierra Pandols, a limestone ridge about 2,000 feet high with absolutely precipitous faces.
Sierra Pandals, now that was a very nasty place, solid granite. And we were holding this ridge against the Moroccan troops, Moorish troops there for 3 to 4 weeks. And there we couldn't build trenches because it was solid granite. All we could do was have big stone and try to build some sort of a parapet with no sandbags, no anything. The battalion were many times told to advance. It was an impossible situation. You can't advance on top of hills and down dales with terrible bombardments going on.
I was in a big crack with 2 of my observers. There we could look down 700 or 800 feet into the gorge, and we could look right across that sector of the battlefield, right across to the pontoon bridges on the Ebro, right on to Bataya, and we could see everything happening. There, all night we were fired at, and then at dawn we heard a thunderous roar. We knew what was coming. We looked out, we peeped out of the crack, and there, about 1,500 feet in the air, were 150 Italian bombers surrounded by 100 Italian fighters. We watched in agonizing suspense, and then they dropped their stuff. The bombs came down like 1,000 express trains, spreading dust and stones and red-hot shrapnel everywhere. As soon as they had gone, another 150 came, and it went like that all day long until the mountain was marked with shrapnel everywhere. In addition to that, we were mortared in regular sequence. First, the Americans got it, then they shifted to the Canadians, then they shifted to the Cubans, then they came to the British, and the Italians on the neighboring ridges of the Pandols showered us with these mortars. It was absolutely terrifying, and those paths of the Sierra Pandols were covered all day by wounded men struggling down on their own or being carried down in stretchers. It was a real slaughterhouse. I can remember about the 24th of August, 1938, I got my weekly Aberdare Leader and some mail from home. I read it in the intervals of the bombing. Then I crawled up to where Tom Howell-Jones from Aberdare was in a stone crevice. I said, "Here's the Aberdare Leader, Tom." Then I got back to my place straight away. An hour later, there was terrible mortaring of the upper ridges of the battalion area. There was a lot of shouting, and they came and said, "Quick, your mate has had it." And I rushed up, and there Tom Howell-Jones and his mates had been killed instantly, and the leader lay there, blood-stained in the trench.
Tom Howell-Jones. Whisk some eggs and pour on the fried potatoes he had written to his mother, giving her the recipe for tortilla. You must try one, and think of me. 4 weeks after his death, with the battle still raging, the orator La Pasionaria addressed the international brigaders as they were being withdrawn from Spain. "Many thousands of you," she said, "are staying here with the Spanish earth for a shroud. To the living," she said, "you are history, you are legend. You can go proudly." But some are not yet free to go.
Up until this time, all prisoners had been shot out of hand on the battle line. But this time, Franco had decided that he was going to win the war very quickly, and he wanted to have all the international brigaders as showpieces for propaganda purposes. So I was very, very glad indeed to be taken a prisoner. We were taken to an old monastery called San Pedro de Gardenia near Burgos. The conditions there were frankly appalling.
And to San Pedro too was to come Morgan Harvard of Swansea, whom they'd left wounded by the roadside.